Okay, Fambulema, warm good evening to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or warm greetings generally to all. This is the Then and Now, and it's a very special program today, the 15th of November, 2020. And I'm your host and presenter, Prince Emil Kroma. It's just a quick one because this cannot happen without you will not pay attention to them or talk about them. It's a very important time of we life. As soon as I can see the background picture, obviously embedded is the picture of the late President of Ghana, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. He was a very towering figure, a big man, a very big man, a very big figure, huge figure. So obviously, with his demise come the interest. They come with the interest to the entire world. Frederica Crispina Johnson, welcome to the program. Yeah, please help us share the program, and if you don't join us, well, please help us share the program. Then and Now is international, so it's to really not only limited, here to that Lily corner we come out, which is Sierra Leone, but rather a bigger corner which represents Africa, West Africa, and even beyond Europe and the Americas, Asia, and you name it, as to you relevant broke. But mainly they focus on that corner day. So this evening, Fambulem, we want to talk about the former president of Ghana, who happened to be now the late man, known as Jerry John Rawlings. He was a flight lieutenant in the Ghanaian army, and obviously he met in demise on the 12th of November, I believe. Yeah, the 12th of November. We all wake up to the news. Again, I repeat, we all woke up to the news that Flight Lieutenant retired Jerry John Rawlings, twice civilian president of Ghana, twice military president or head of state of Ghana, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, and this is now a critical time in the history of Africa, when Africa been tried to take a different shape. That's when this man arrived on the scene. So let me get a brief background on the late man. Like I say, we all wake up to the news that on the 12th of November 2020, we say the president of Ghana, the former president of Ghana, don't passed away. This is Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. And I remember people that this is not the first president of Ghana where they die. We don't get a few of them we don't die, which is, I know if you want to go back to the days of Kwame Osachifo Nkrumah, the founding father of Ghana, but I can rather talk about the recent ones, when then Kufuor, them John Kufuor, John Atta Mills, and now, and these people were huge as well. These people were president of Ghana. Now you get the most prominent one, the most known one. He just passed on to the great beyond on the 12th of November, 2020. And this was a real big story for the entire world, specifically Africa. Like I'm going to say, when we read this news here, we need to know that this former president of Ghana had been born or was born. Let me speak because I think we'd expect a few Ghanaians them on the program and other foreign friends that might be listening. Jerry John Rawlings was born in Accra on the 22nd of June, 1947, to a Ghanaian mother and a Scottish father. In other words, the mom was Black and the dad was white. The dad was of Scottish descent, a white Caucasian of Scottish descent, and the mom was a Black African with a Ghanaian origin. She was from Ghana. Jerry John Rawlings was born in a place called Zelukope, I hope I pronounce it right, near a place called Keta. That's in the Volta region. If we know a little bit about Ghana, the Volta region, as for that one, I know say it kind of famous for a few reasons, maybe the Akasomo Dam, education, and etc., etc. This former president, now the late Jerry, was a an alma mater of one of the most prominent schools, not the world. One of the most prominent schools, now Africa. When I say not the world, it's not a slip of tongue, it's real. Achimota was model. You know, again, you see, we don't need to start going back, because obviously what I'm trying to say is like Achimota was modeled after British colonialism. They model it, you know, yeah, that only the best could go there, and therefore only the best could come from there. And the best that could come from there are people who eventually will lead the country. And as we speak tonight, this particular school of learning has produced about 3 Ghanaian leaders. If I got this correct, which will be the man that we are talking about tonight, is definitely from Achimota School. And in Achimota School, he was able to obtain his general certificate, what we call GCSE, O level. That's back in 1966. He later went on to enlist in the Ghanaian Armed Forces as a flight cadet, okay? He enrolled in the Ghanaian Armed Forces as a flight cadet, obviously, then at the Ghana Air Force. 1 year after he graduated from the Achimota School, Rawlings went on for register in interest in the Army, went on to sign on for an Army cadet course that relating to flight from a young age. I'm not able to play the tape then tonight because there are many tapes in which you reasonably can hear the story from the man himself. So he joined the Ghanaian Armed Forces as a cadet back in 1967, then at the Air Force Division. And he was so smart. He proved to be so smart at that young age, so committed, so dedicated, so inspired, and know what he wanted to do, okay? He knew exactly what he wanted to do. So he was selected immediately. Remember, you apply and then you are selected based on your credentials. So the Ghanaian Military Academy, of course, is still a very, very high level of an academy. If you would think, I'm not talking about a military academy. Then it was so much of a high level academy, you know, yeah, with discipline. Remember, later things can descend into either into good or for bad. And during this era that we're talking about, when the flight went in there, the late Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, a few years later, a lot of other things eventually will happen, in which the discipline that normally is supposed to be in institutions of that nature, because that's how they are shaped, turn out to be completely different. But here is the thing, the bottom line is, the man that we are talking about tonight was able to enter the cadet school, that's the Ghanaian Military Academy and Training School, which is located in a place called Teshi in Ghana, in Accra. In March 1968, he was posted to Takoradi in the Western region to continue his course. So he started a course in one particular place, which is called Teshi. And after a year, because that was in 1967, he was sent over to continue his course in the Western region in a place known as Takoradi, I think one of Ghana's biggest cities as well. That's where he went to continue his course. By 1969, the late Jerry John Rawlings had passed out as a commissioned pilot officer. By 1969, the late Jerry John Rawlings had passed out and had become a commissioned officer, a pilot officer, okay? That's back in 1969. He won or was given, certificated with something that he would treasure for the rest of his life, because the accolade was so big. Very few would have had it at the time. And imagine, this was, you know, a few years after independence. I believe Ghana got their independence back in 1957 and was known to be the Black Star. And the Black Star is representative of the African continent, of the state that the continent was in at the time. That's why you will hear from the founding father of Ghana, the late Kwame Osagyefo Nkrumah, saying that the independence of Ghana is twin with the independence of the entire continent. Today, he's been blamed here and there, while others are learning how to appreciate him, but the vast majority are on his side. But today, we're talking about another legend, another great, who happens to be the late Ghanaian president, Flight Lieutenant retired Jerry John Rawlings. So Jerry was awarded the Speed Bird Trophy. And what did this represent is he was known to be the best cadet in flying and airmanship. Remember this, ladies and gentlemen, that he went into the flying school, the Air Cadet School of the Ghanaian Armed Forces. He spent roughly about 3 years there after graduating from Achimota, one of the most high class. When I'm talking about high class, I'm talking about education level in Ghana, both in the then and the now. Of course, there are other competitors, but then Achimota was known all over. I used to hear the name. I've read books with the name Achimota, and I've seen a few graduates from there. So this is where the late man came from. Right. So Flight Lieutenant was to go on and earn the rank of Flight Lieutenant in April 1978. Remember, we're talking about him now, 50 years after he had enrolled in the school, where the rank that he got up to this day until his demise, he got this in 1978. He was known to be an efficient officer with a rapport with the men that served under him, which is a good quality for leadership. You are in tandem with the people that serve with you, whether they are seniors or juniors. The idea, you are a people's person and you can get along. That's a good quality, a good attribute, okay? So during his service with the Ghanaian Armed Forces, he witnessed the deterioration, and these are things that will come to shape the late man's life. He witnessed the deterioration of discipline and morale, which was in itself reflected something that became known as corrupt practices. The Ghanaian Armed Forces, which was very disciplined, highly placed, highly respected, became a bastion for corruption. Those of us who were on the outside kept seeing coups after coups. And you know, when you see coups after coups, which means that the status quo, the institutions are being weakened, because by the time Ghana got independence, a constituted authority was left in the form of civilian institutions, which were meant to shape the direction the country was meant to go and make decisions, implement policies for the greater good of Ghanaians. And one of these institutions was the military, which was the pride of Ghana. Unfortunately, this was not to be, and in the eyes of Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings, he became really concerned at the deterioration of discipline within the rank and file of the Ghanaian Armed Forces. He saw morale on the deep because, of course, because corruption was rife, because the economy was bad. In any country, be it a Western country, you will find those attributes because the center is beginning to become shaky. And this is what happened in Ghana in the late 1970s and in the 80s, throughout the 80s, even when the Flight Lieutenant, the late, took over. We then know that this was some of the things, you know, yeah, with the benefit of hindsight, what we've heard, what we've read, different accounts, that this helped to shape him, that he did not like what he saw about an institution that he cherished, an institution which he was a part and parcel of, okay? As promotion went on to bring him in close contact with the privileged classes, understand this, promotion started bringing him closer to the privileged classes within the armed forces of Ghana. He began to understand more and more what the situation was, what was perpetuating the situation, who and who were responsible, because he was keen on understanding. He was looking, he was listening, he was learning, okay? He was looking, he was listening, he was learning. So he began to work within the circles of military discipline, within the circles of military power. Remember then, in the 1970s, you had a spate of military coup. Okay, I think we've got our first caller here. Hello, caller. Yes, sir, how are you? Good, I'm very good, sir. I'm sure you want to participate in the program, but first of all, your line is very low. The connection here that was supposed to raise the volume is a bit dodgy tonight, and I'm sure you want to participate in the program. Will you please state your name and where you're calling from, please?
Right, my name is Samuel. I'm calling from Canning
Okay, and welcome to the program, Samuel. I'm sure you are aware of what we're talking about here tonight, but for the others who may not be aware, but it is there, we are talking about the life and time of one of Ghana's best known sons, though a polarizing figure, but he's now a dead man, and we are talking about his memory. What have you got to say regarding the program here tonight, the late Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings?
Right, I mean, thank you for, first of all, thank you for picking up. I mean, I see Rawlings to be a very prominent figure in Ghana politics. I mean, from where he came from, what he did, after what he did, you know, handing over power back, allowing Ghana to start the Fourth Republic, and transferring power, I think that was very, it was remarkable for someone in his status, because if you look around, a lot of the military people that took power in Africa and some West African countries as well, they decided to stay on, but Rawlings was different, you know, Rawlings was different. So I just wanted to say, you know, I just wanted to contribute and say how big a loss it is for, obviously for Africa and, you know, most importantly for the Ghanaian people.
Absolutely. It is a big loss for Africa and specifically the Ghanaians. And my heartfelt sympathy and deepest condolences go to the people of Ghana and the people of Africa. Did I pick up you say, sir, that Rawlings was different? For the benefit of viewers and listeners, when you say was different, because you were attributing to a period in which there were coup d'etats left, right, and center.
Yes.
What exactly do you mean that he was different within that period that we are talking about?
He was different in the sense that, you know, what was going on at the time, you know, was not right for the country. You know, what was going on at the time in terms of the food hoarding, the hoarding in general, you know, the corruption, you know, as a young soldier, you know, he decided to step up that many of the generals refused to. So, you know, for a young flight lieutenant, not even a full lieutenant, flight lieutenant, to be able to see those, you know, things going on at the time and deciding to step up, I mean, that alone is a commendable act. So starting out doing it, you know, then, you know, fortunately his coup was successful, getting rid of the corrupt people and, you know, allowing things to flow, because things were not flowing, you know, things like even toilet rolls were even hoarded. So it was a state in which Ghana was, which wasn't really the best, you know. And that also explained why many people left Ghana at the time, you know. Many people went to Nigeria and other parts of Africa at the time. So for a young soldier to step up to that level is very, you know, is commendable, highly commendable, highly commendable.
Okay.
And you know, successful coups, two successful coups, you know, then handing power, then allowing Ghana to start a whole Fourth Republic, then his party lost, and then giving power back to opposition. I mean, that for me is something that I really, and many Ghanaians are applauding for that. Many Ghanaians are, applauding for the peace we are enjoying today.
Right. So let me ask this question, before I let you go, because again, you've made a salient point, in trying to articulate what this great man, kind of represented. But we will know that people of this level, this kind of caliber, are people, who are so kind of imposing. And the point I'm trying to make here is as a leader, and a man who was on top of Ghanaian politics and leadership at the very hem for over 2 decades, putting everything together. When he was a military man, as an head of state, handed over power, came back again, and matriculated into becoming a civilian ruler for almost 20 years. So,
yes.
I mean, this man was known in every nook and cranny. That's why he's so much of a towering figure. So people like this don't go unnoticed and not being a polarizing figure. And this is the question that I want to ask, because there are Ghanaians, obviously, who sort of say negative things, which you will expect, because you can't have a nation of 27, 28 million people to support him. But would you say that the vast majority of Ghanaians did appreciate the life and times of this man, what he did for Ghana?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, Rawlings wouldn't have done what he did alone if he did not get the support of the country. Most people, I'm young, but obviously the history is there. Our parents, have told us the history, and the history is in the books as well. So Rawlings wouldn't have been able to do what he did without the support of the people. Rawlings, in my opinion, I will call him a Robin Hood. He was trying to break that whole dominance that was by some few elites that were, that were corrupt and were holding things, and whilst the masses were suffering. So Rawlings, like I said, he had to step in, and people had to help him to do that. Many people supported him in his quest for freedom at the time. That is why the masses called it Junior Jesus, J.J. So Rawlings, I would say, was always, supported by the Ghanaian people, and you could tell from, all the statements and that are coming out from, all walks of life of the Ghanaian people. Everybody is sad because, majority of Ghanaians loved it. When you look at the internet, from celebrities to the lowest man, all coming out to say how great he was and how, we are enjoying the peace we have today because of him. So, I mean, in life, you always have a few people who would want to oppose, greatness, you see. And I think that those people that decided to oppose, Rawlings, or who do not like Rawlings, were in other way connected to the people that were holding stuff, the people that were corrupt at the time. In my personal opinion.
Right.
So, I believe that the Ghanaian people loved Rawlings, and Ghanaian people still love him up to today, and Ghanaian people will continue to love him. I think this is history that will always remain in the Ghanaian books, in the African books, and generations to come, they will learn about Rawlings.
Which brings me to my final question. You made such brilliant points. You do sound Ghanaian, if you don't mind me kind of asking and providing.
I am Ghanaian.
Brilliant. Many thanks for that. And I'm providing a perspective, because there are divides, but the divides seem to be the few on the negative and the many on the more. But with what you've said, definitely you do hold the late man in high regard and appreciate, his life and time.
Absolutely.
But my question here to you, sir, Mr. Samuel, is what do you think the late man will be best remembered for? Well, in your opinion, because there are many things, from different people and the rest of it, but from your end, what do you think the late Flight Lieutenant Junior Jesus Rawlings will be best remembered for?
I think for one thing, which is the peace that Ghana is enjoying. I think for me, that is what everybody's saying. That's what most Ghanaians are saying. I mean, for him to transfer power, you know,
yeah.
because, transferring power to the opposition party, because his party lost when, after his 2 term of office, mind you that he was a military man, became a civilian, won 2 elections back to back, and then lost, and then gave power back, and that has been like that till today. Transition of power in a very smooth way. So one key thing for me when you mention Rawlings is the peace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Many thanks, Mr. Samuel, for this contribution here tonight. It's deeply appreciated by this platform, the Then and Now. So we now know from the perspective of one Ghanaian that what the late man will be remembered for is for keeping the peace for Ghana. As a young military man, he could have continued. But when the time came, he bowed out gracefully, although he still remained a towering figure in Ghanaian politics and the general socio perspective of Ghana. He still remained in the background and was advising and talking to Ghanaians to the very end. Thank you so much, Mr. Samuel. Many thanks, sir. Yeah, okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was the voice of a Ghanaian there, providing perspective on the life and times of the late Jerry John Rawlings, and a final question as to what particularly the late Jerry John Rawlings, who split opinion somewhere in Ghana, will be best remembered for. We say many thanks to that caller. So as we were saying, okay, Rawlings started winning accolades from a younger age when he got enrolled at the school in when he came off from Achimota College, which has produced many Ghanaian leaders. I think they've had 3 heads of state that have come from Achimota. So it must be a special place. He then went on to join the Ghanaian Armed Forces in the Air Services Division, okay, where he won the coveted Speedbird Trophy, which was a trophy which would be given to the best in terms of flying. I remember listening to one of Rawlings' tapes in which they were standing somewhere with his mom at his back, and I think he was being asked the question what he would like to become when he did grow up. And then he said, I would like to fly. I would like to be a pilot. And these were strange times and strange things, according to him, his mom slapped his back, because what the mom wanted as typical of we Africans, we are beginning to have different views now and giving more independence to our kids. It's like we just held on to a system that was passed on over to us that we intended to pass over to our kids. In other words, they designed what they want us to be. You are going to be a doctor. Not that I want you to be a doctor. You are going to be a doctor. You are going to be an accountant. This is what I want you to be. I mean, all these fabulous, well-designed, high-profile professions. But there are many other things to the aspect of life as we do understand it. So at that young and tender age, the late Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings was expressing a kind of feeling, towards what he wanted to do. And he was clear about it because as he grew up, he ended up realizing his life dream, which was to become a pilot. So he started flying planes in the Ghanaian army. And we were saying that during his service with the Ghana Air Force, he did manage to witness the deterioration of discipline and morale within a very, very credible institution, because colonialism phased out and won the independence. These institutions were very, very strong, powerful, and disciplined, and he knew this. So he started witnessing the deterioration of it. So he saw the regime of the Supreme Military Council at that time was responsible for the deterioration of morale in the Ghanaian Armed Forces and discipline as well. And as he became a dedicated officer and started getting promotions left, right, and center, he started, mingling with the officer class. And those of you who come from these kind of backgrounds, regimental, the military, for example, will find that you are now in a mess. I think they call it a mess, where people go to eat, like a canteen. Civilians call it canteen. In the army, they call it a mess. I think the police call it a mess as well. This is where you go to eat. There will be a certain section for officers and a certain section, because there is discipline in those institutions. But as he started getting all these decorations and being promoted through, he started going closer and closer to the very people who he saw as being very, very corrupt. But that gave him a time to reflect. And then he started understanding what was really what he was up against. He became very aware about the injustices in the Ghanaian society. And this sharpened his belief that something has to be done. It cannot be business as usual from what he had learned. The Supreme Military Council, I think that was that of General Afrifa, was very, very corrupt. I mean, there were a spate of military coups. You had General Kotoka, you had General Afrifa, and then you had General Ike Achampong, and then Ignatius Achampong, and then you had Fred Akufo. I remember him well. That's back in the 1970s, late 1970s. I remember those two very well. Ike Achampong and Fred Akufo, because by then I was reading massively into politics, and there was a Ghanaian edited magazine called Africa Now, which was a powerful magazine with a wide subscription and distribution network. And we used to buy that, and I used to read Newsweek and the Times magazine. So I was fully aware about what was going on in Ghana to some extent at the time. So much so that when this flight lieutenant took over power, or made his first attempt and failed, I was aware. I knew about the torture because I read about it. I knew about the jail where he was in prison because I read about it. I knew about one or two of the people who imprisoned him, who tortured him, and how he was meant to be killed. It was during this period while he was serving sentence, because when you carry out a military plot, it's always against the will and wishes of the people as enshrined in the Constitution. We're not talking about the there and then, because the people might want to change because nothing is happening. But remember, it's a constitutional rule. So you are usurping power. And usurping power means that's a treasonous offense, and is punishable by death. Okay? So he was said that he was going to be killed anyway, and we could understand why, because he led the mutiny. But then, whilst he was serving a prison sentence, his men came and released him from prison, and he became the new military leader, and that was under the AFRC. So at the time, we need to understand two aspects of the history of Jerry John Rawlings in terms of the national platform. On June 4th, it's a very important day in Ghanaian history, 1979. Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings was taken away from custody. Okay, his men released him from custody and made him the military head of a coup which they had just carried out. And this coup was carried out both by military and civilians, okay? And they overthrew the Supreme Military Council. And this ushered in a new period of military men as well, but under the Jerry John Rawlings. That's the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council. So the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, under the chairmanship of this young Flight Lieutenant Rawlings. Let me see whether I can bring up the young flight. No, this is another one. Let's see him in his overalls. I remember him in his overalls a lot of times. Yeah. So that's him there, a skinny, you want to say a bony young Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, bespectacled with afro, which was very popular at the time. And that was him there. So took over the reins of government at a very young and tender age. And remember, he had this burning passion in him for a change in Ghanaian politics. He thought he was the kind of savior. Remember, the previous caller mentioned something regarding his two first names, J.J, which is something about Jesus. He says something about Jesus. So he was like the Messiah. He was like the sent one to redeem the Ghanaians. And family, friends, my Ghanaian friends, international friends, friends of different nationality. Of course, a lot of us know the story now, but this was no child's play. This was very serious then in Ghana. Ghana was a rich country, very rich country in terms of gold and other produce, agricultural produce, the land of cocoa, the land of gold. In fact, at one time, Ghana's name, the country's name, was known as the Gold Coast. Imagine if they name your country the Gold Coast. What would that mean? And that's exactly what we're talking about. But then, because of rampant corruption, mismanagement, coup d'etats, inefficiency, which we saw during the 1980s and 90s in different countries, where there were all these coup plots and coup d'etats. All these countries deteriorated into garbage, honestly. And on top of it, we had the international community, like the IMF, imposing their values on us. One of them was the SAP program, which was the Structural Adjustment Program, which just killed so many African countries. They gave you conditions which were not favorable for us, but we had to take them. It's like they're ramming down something down your throat, and it had to go there. I don't want to go into that dark times, but today we are talking about the life and times of one of Africa's favorite son, the late Jerry John Rawlings. Okay, so he became the leader of the AFRC. Of course, in the military term, or when those coups were taking place, you call it the chairman. Jerry John Rawlings had some kind of Marxist, or I'm talking about ideology now, or socialist kind of ideology. And most of the leaders, and this is something else that we need to know, that most of the leaders who came at the time, be it Kwame Nkrumah, the father of Ghanaian democracy or the Ghanaian nation, Robert Gabriel Mugabe, the late man, may his soul rest in perfect peace, and many others, Z. Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, the current head of state, his father, who was also the founding father of Kenya, Julius Walimu Nyerere, who tried many different forms of socialism and organize, mobilize and organize, how would you call it? Many institutions like the Uhuru Brigade, the Ujamaa Brigade. I mean, these were different forms because after trying capitalism, under which we suffered a lot because we were colonized, we wanted something new. We wanted a breakaway from that. Unfortunately, it did not work. And the same people came and penetrated all of this movement, took control directly and indirectly, and started instituting the people that they wanted. Hence, you saw people like the late Thomas Sankara, another brilliant son of Africa. One day we would do a program on him, who met his demise, lost his life at the hands of his friend. But his friend was this was a machinated coup. We know this. The Burkina Faso, he was responsible for changing the name, which meant or means the land of incorruptible men. It was formerly the Upper Volta. That's how the Ivory Coast was called. That's how colonial masters came and gave us all these names which were strange to us. But if you want to capture a people, you have to capture their mind. You have to capture the being. And these are the things that happen. Okay, I just got a word. Mr. Parker is telling me that the network is really bad. Oh my God, network is really bad. Mr. Parker, what is it like now? Any better, sir? Yeah, this is an hour's program. We'll go roughly about 12, 15 minutes. I'm wrapping up any moment from now. Is the line any better, sir, Mr. Parker? Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can hotspot. Let me hotspot and see. Yeah, let me hotspot. Yeah, please bear with me. Let me try to do a hotspot and see whether the line will improve. Let me see whether the lines will improve. But we're coming towards the end of the program. Okay. So for those of you who are just joining, we're talking about the life and times of the late Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, a very towering figure, a big figure, a huge figure. Africa has lost a son. The Ghanaians have lost a son. Together we mourn with the Ghanaians because this man, not only did he represented Africa, you need to go and understand him. You need to go and listen to him. You need to hear what he used to say. He's got a book coming out. In fact, he was planning to release the book, but unfortunately that book was not released till he met his demise. But in that book, of course, we're expecting a bombshell because there were many questions asked of him towards the end of his time. And he said, read my book. When they come out, read my book. So he was going to use that particular book, which we're expecting to come out, to talk about things that people wanted to know, some of these accusations that were made. Like, for example, he was accused of killing certain people. And he did explain that, no, he wasn't responsible. There was a list that was brought to him. In fact, there was an original list. And by the time the list came down the rank, that list contained names which were initially not there, but was placed there by certain people who had certain grudge matches. He was also accused of killing some judges, which is true. Those judges were killed because they found that those judges were corrupt. And I'm hearing that there was some, a level of acrimony, some level of deceit. And these judges sat on the PM, I've forgotten the name of the first coup plotters. I mean, the title that they had. But this is what really happened. So these judges were killed, I think about 3 of them. And some people, as usual, when a coup place takes hold, they go around hijacking people, disappearing people. This happens all over the world. Some people will just disappear and you will get to not to ever know the whereabouts of these people. But here is the point, ladies and gentlemen. The idea that we've lost the late Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. We know at the time of his death, he was 73 years old and he died on the 12th of November, 2020. That's when this great man lost his life. So we're just talking about the life and times of this man. We need to remember this as I close the program, that he seized power in Ghana twice, but he was able to return the country to democratic control. After his first coup attempt, he was sentenced to death, but he escaped to overthrow the country's military government. Escape in the sense there were men out all along. In fact, they were trying to look for this men, chasing them. But these men whom he had the first coup plot with, they were still out there and they were able to lead a second coup plot, which was very and highly successful. And they released the late Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings and made him the head of state. Okay. So initially, that's what I was saying. He had this Marxist socialist principles. So what he did in Ghana was introduce a free market reform, and he made the country, and these are the things that he will be remembered for. He made the country a major player in the UN peacekeeping missions. So Jerry John Rawlings, let's not forget, he was 73 years old. He was born in Ghana on June 22nd, 1947, the son of a Scottish farmer, then in the British colonial Ghana, and a Ghanaian mother. He went to the Achimota Secondary School, from where he excelled. He did so well. He was good at certain sports, like polo, for example. He played polo and was good. He was well watched, and he was a mixed race. So he did stand out. His wife, Nana, have spoken many times, because I think they went to the same school, and he could see Jerry. And when Jerry fell in love with her, she noticed that because she equally was in love. He was very outspoken from a young age. He was rebellious. He had this, these tensions ongoing inside him as a virtue of what was happening in his beloved Ghana. And we've talked about how he enrolled in a military school near Teshi, and he became a flight lieutenant, promoted back then. And Ghana suffered during those periods before he became head of state. And those burning desire to turn things around made him to institute measures, made him to take action, some of them which were not popular, but at the time thought it was popular because what we're now beginning to understand is what he was doing it in the greater good for country and countrymen, okay? He vented this anger on indiscipline and corruption and mismanagement throughout his life, up to his death. That's what he was talking. Watch the interviews of late, after he has grown all this white, wisdom-looking beard and hair, everything looking like snowflakes. When a ban on political party was lifted in 1979, Rawlings won the popularity as a prominent critic of government, a call on the government for do more to help the poor people. And this is what kind of more endeared him to the Ghanaian public. Now I was talking about the judges that were alleged to have killed. He escaped from jail, and we have to say thank you, those of us that supported him, thank you to the officers who overthrew the ranks of the army and then went and freed him. And that was the time of General Akufo. He was also accused, for, the brutish way in which he killed his military generals. They were executed in a firing squad. There were attempts to try to save them. But worst of all was a military leader who had nothing to do with the recent times. I mean, at the time that he executed his coup, became part of those that were executed that did not go down well with Ghanaians. Ghanaians will definitely miss Mr. Rawlings. Definitely. He's now the late Jerry John Rawlings. And we here at the Then and Now are saying, may the soul of this man rest in perfect peace. May light perpetual shine on his soul. May he sit somewhere and find peace, which we think eventually he will. His life was well lived, and I don't think he went with many regrets apart from some of the mistakes that he will have made. But the idea that in general, what he tried to do was to bring respect, was to bring morale, was to bring discipline in an institution which he loved, was to bring respect and dignity to Ghanaians, both locally and internationally. And he did succeed in many respects. He succeeded in many respects. Ghanaians became military officers. Ghanaians started serving in UN peacekeeping missions. People started making foreign currencies and were able to bring it back to shore up the Ghanaian economy. The cedi was devalued. The basic economic things were applied to the cedi. Gradually, Ghanaians who are keen enough to buy bread, buy toothpaste, buy milk, and what have you, things started changing for them. This was due to the actions taken by the late Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. We say may his soul rest in peace. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this was it. But just before I go, a few announcements. There will be an interview this Saturday coming, in which we will have the president of SLAJ, the Sierra Leonean Journalism Association. This is Mr. Nasrallah, will be on the program. We will also have, they both will be on the program. They will, the other person is Dr. Tonya Musa, who happens to be the head of the mass communication department at Forabe College. They will be on this program on Saturday for an interview, exclusive then and now. We also know that Marcella Samba Sise, the outspoken critic, the civil defense towering pillar figure who holds, to account the authorities, basically the feet to the flame or the fire. She will be on this platform. We haven't decided a date yet, but we do have an agreement. She will be here. And the lady representing the Union Party, UP, will also be here at some given date, and we'll announce this pretty soon. This is Claudius Femiko. In terms of the 3rd anniversary of this platform then and now, the planning is in full effect, is in full force. We now know Marcella is going to be on the platform. We now know that Fadima Savage of VOS Television is going to be on the platform. We now know that the two people I named earlier are going to be on the platform, Dr. Tonya Musa head of mass communication department at Frabe College, and the Sierra Leonean Association of Journalists / President, Mr. Ahmed Nasrallah, is going to be here. We also know that the editor